transit or the airport police immediately. All checked and carry-on luggage is subject to search.
Well, hello everybody, it's Ken Francis here, and it is September 29th, 2024, and I'm coming to you from the airport in Salt Lake City. Now, I was here 2 weeks ago where I was stranded because I had some flight problems, but I ended up making it to Seattle, and now I'm on my way back, and the opposite happened. I actually got to the airport here half an hour early, and I have a 4-hour layover. Thought this would be a good time to maybe just kind of sit back, relax, and reflect about the last 2 weeks. I'm here, I'm safe, I had a great time, and just want to take a deep breath here. I'm really appreciative of having this 4-hour layover because it gives me kind of a moment to decompress. If anybody has ever been to Seattle or the Pacific Northwest, you know that it is green. You are in a lush forest. And that is not what I'm going home to. California and Southern California, LA is not like that at all. It is very dry. There are trees, there are palm trees, but it's not a lush forest. If you want to see a lush forest in Los Angeles, you got to go to Disneyland. I don't know if they know that we have drought conditions there, but everywhere else you know that you live in a desert-like climate. So just to decompress, because everywhere I went was just so incredibly green, and being out on Puget Sound and in like the area around Vancouver Island and the surrounding islands, there's just so much water, lakes, and the ocean. It was just so different than the world that I came from. And yeah, I missed my connecting flight and had to spend the night here in Salt Lake City. But the first day in Seattle was kind of a day to acclimate and decompress. I did not bring my own bicycle on this trip and borrowed a friend's and was able to get the bike set up. Not perfectly. I wasn't able to get my handlebar bag on the bike, but I set it up good enough to be able to get on the bike and all my gear on there and be able to maneuver it and feel safe. And then went to the Washington State Fair, or the Western Washington State Fair, with my friend Philip, where I got to ride a couple roller coasters and just kind of get acclimated to the Pacific Northwest. Next morning, got up early, hopped on the bike, rode into Seattle on the bicycles, and took the ferry over to Bainbridge Island and ended up camping out at Kitsap State Park. And kind of ironic because on the way there, we stopped at a Burger King for lunch, and while we were sitting in a restaurant, it looked like it was going to rain. So I ran across the street, went into a dollar store, bought a pack of cards and a really cheap set of dominoes. And as soon as I got back, it just poured for about 2.5 hours. So spent some time hanging out at Burger King and just making the best of it. And it's ironic because this is the second time this year that we decided to go into a Burger King, and no sooner did we go inside than all of a sudden it just started raining. And that was what happened on the last day of the last trip in June on the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan. Rain didn't last all day. We got back on the bikes, made it to the campground. Beautiful. Next day, spent some time with some friends in Port Townsend. Then we had a long ride to get to Port Angeles. And then the next morning, took the ferry over to Vancouver Island and then Salt Spring Island, where we had another amazing night camping. Coming back to Vancouver Island, I reconnected with some old friends. And then we ended up back in Port Angeles and made our way on the bikes over to Forks, and then down the coast all the way to Tillamook, Oregon, before crossing the mountains and ending up in Portland yesterday, and then taking the train back to my friend's house outside of Seattle. Beautiful trip. I had some threats of rain on the horizon, and it was interesting because I kept telling myself, this is the same weather I've had in Germany and the Netherlands this time of the year when I've traveled over there. Why is it bothering me here and not over there? And I realized I really enjoy being over there. So even if it's raining or wet, I can go into a little coffee shop and just enjoy being there. Here, not quite the same thing, but like I said, didn't have too much rain, and the trip was amazing. As far as safety is concerned, the shoulders weren't always as wide as I would like them to have been, especially coming to bridges where all of a sudden there are no shoulders. So I coordinated myself with traffic, and when there was no cars behind me, that's when I would cross the bridge. Had a few close calls, logging trucks, gravel haulers, a lot of people with RVs, our fifth wheel trailers and towing boats, but most people gave us a wide berth and went around us, and we tried to be safe, and we were. It was a very successful trip. Even going over the Astoria Bridge, I've known dozens of people that have gone over that bridge, and I did go over that bridge once before in 2001, so I knew it could be done. Don't remember all the dead birds in the shoulder bike lane while I did it last time, which was really weird because I didn't really feel comfortable riding my bike over them, but tried not to veer out into traffic if there weren't cars behind me, and most of the way that the traffic was fairly light that day when we crossed the bridge, so that was a really, really good thing. I just want to say, looking back now, I challenged myself. I haven't done a lot of trips with hills lately. Most of my trips have been fairly flat. We had a few kind of long grades to go over, and I'm 62 years old, so I'm not as young as I used to be, which makes the trip a little bit more challenging, and sometimes I doubt myself. And this is where I have to tap into my inner senior citizen and make sure that I pace myself well and don't try to push myself too hard. There was one day where there were some hills and there was some construction in the hills, and I had to force myself to ride up faster and stronger than I would normally want to ride up these hills, just because the construction zone and there was a flag car leading people through, and I didn't want to delay traffic, so I pushed myself a little bit harder, and later in the day I kind of felt it in my legs. So I'm not the same strong person I was going over the Rockies when I was in my mid-20s, but still had a great time, and it is reassuring to know that I have several more trips and years of traveling left in me. I just have to pace myself and be gentle. The longest day we did was, I think, 76 miles, so still have that in me as well. And looking forward to coming home, there might be some winds of change on the horizon. I work for a shop that is a union shop, and it looks like our union might be going out on strike, and it could be days, it could be weeks, it could even be months that I'm out. So being on this trip gave me time to plan. If I have all this other time on my hands, what do I want to do with this time? How do I want to use this time wisely? It's a gift. Not that I'm saying I want to go on strike, and I'm looking forward to going on strike, and I hope we don't go on strike. But if by chance we do, I want to make sure that I value each moment just as if I were working. So I kind of have a plan of attack set out, things around the house that I want to do, different ways I can volunteer with my time, and other ways that maybe I can open up private practice again and see some individuals for therapy, and just keep the balance in my life as my work slice kind of changes for a while. I want to keep my life in balance, so I know I have to readjust the other slices, and I have a plan, and I think that's really important. So I'm kind of excited about going back. I'm excited about going back to work and seeing people that I haven't seen in a while, both staff members that I work with and patients that I'm used to working with and haven't seen in a few weeks. And hopefully I will have a few more weeks with them if we do go on strike before the strike happens. So keeping balance is really what it's all about. Keeping balance, being optimistic. And I have to say, there were some mornings when I woke up that I thought about the road ahead of me and not sure if I wanted to face the traffic, not sure I wanted to go over the hills, had a little bit of dread, had a little bit of intrepidation. But I always remind myself, once I get on the ride, once I get on the bike, once I get moving, that everything works out. And I always get to where I'm going in the end. In fact, honestly, on this trip, there was 2 days that we had planned that were going to be 35-mile days. And when we got to the destination in the end of the first day, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said to my friend Philip, I said, I think we can do another 35 miles before it gets dark. Why not push ourselves ahead a day? And I'm glad we did, because a few days later, there was a day of rain. And I suggested, why don't we get a motel for 2 nights? And that way we don't have to push ourselves in the rain, and we have somewhere that's safe and dry. So everything worked out beautifully. And I figure this is, I think, number 62 as far as long distance bicycle trips for me. And I think the trips that I've done with Philip, I think this is number 26 or 27. And we totaled up the miles that he and I had ridden together over the last 26, 27 years, and it came to, I think, over 33,000 miles. So those are just rides I've done with him. I know that I've done well over 100,000 miles on the bicycle, because I retired one of my bicycles 20 years ago, and I was very religious and diligent in keeping my odometer current on that. I would change the batteries every 2,000 miles, and I retired that bicycle at 62,000 miles. That's 100,000 kilometers, and that's just one bike, and that was 20 years ago. So I've ridden a lot since then, so I know I've gone probably at least, if not farther than 100,000 miles in my lifetime on my bicycle. And it's all been good. Anyway, those of you that have been sharing my journey and have been following along, I thank you. Sometimes I feel like some of my friends and my patients are in my back pocket when I do this, and it gives me more encouragement and hope as I go down the road. So thank you all for your support, and I will look forward to seeing you down the road.